have to tell you about something to help you out. The world's largest offshore event taking place entirely online. You hear that? Online. From October 7th through 11th. It's going to be put on by our friend Mikkel Thorop, host of the Expat Money Show, the highly sought after expat consultant with over 2 decades of experience. In this offshore event, online, like we said, you will discover why international diversification is a must for those looking to preserve their liberty and wealth. You will learn everything you need to know about crafting your perfect plan B. We all should have that. Maybe plan C, plan D, and so on. How to quickly acquire a second passport, diversify your finances offshore, invest in international real estate, and get in-depth insights on geopolitics from world-renowned experts. And these are the actual real experts, not the trust the experts kind that we've been promised to trust. Headline speakers include Dr. Ron Paul, Doug Casey, friend of the show Scott Horton, Tom Woods, Mark Faber, Tom Luongo. A lot of those names have been on this show, so you guys are going to want to tune into this online, like we said, October 7th through 11th. To reserve your complimentary ticket, head over to expatmoneysummit.com. That is expatmoneysummit.com. Let's get back to the show.
You are now listening to the Counterflow Podcast, a place for dissonant voices and unapproved opinions.
You get split in half, the icon, the hologram graph, but I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus, but I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Here is your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back once again to the Counterflow Podcast. As always, I am your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson, coming to you out of Lockhart, Texas. This episode, my guest is friend of the show, friend in real life, and fellow traveler over to Mount Athos with me, Conrad Franz from the World War Now podcast, and he lives just right up the road. We were both fortunate enough to be extended an invite from Father Peter Heers, friend of the show, who most of you guys will be very familiar with. He invited us both to Mount Athos. A lot of you guys understand this already. You know this. I've been threatening to drop this episode, and people have been asking about it. So in this episode, we're going to discuss the trip, what it meant to us, the ups, the downs, the amazing parts, the beautiful parts, and what we got out of it. We are also going to have a slideshow during it. So I will say up front, and I say this later on in the episode, this one is best consumed, as the kids say these days, on the YouTube page because, it does show a slideshow and there's really beautiful pictures that I took on the trip. There's a few video clips and whatnot. If you just prefer audio, that will work fine because, again, we're talking about the clips, and so maybe you'll get something from that. That's about probably 30 minutes of this episode, maybe 20, something like that. It was a wonderful trip. I will never be able to thank Father Peter Heers enough. I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot just generally speaking. I was humbled many times. I was taken way out of my comfort zone many times, which I think is good, right? That's how you grow. If I can go to the gym and be taken out of my comfort zone, if I can do that all the time, then is it really taken out of my comfort zone, right? So this is something that's very unique, and it could be the last time I ever go there. I hope not. You never know, right? I doubt it, but it could be. And so just like I said, I can't thank Father Peter Heers enough for extending this invitation. And what a wonderful guide he was. His son, Gregory, both of his sons, really. Gregory was with us most of the time, though, and he could even do some of the translating for us that Father Peter was rusty on. So what a bright young man. Father Peter has a wonderful family. And now it feels like all of us crazy young guys that went with them are part of the family. And again, if you're an Orthodox man listening to this and you have the opportunity to go to Mount Athos, I think hopefully after seeing this discussion, you will want to take that opportunity. If you get it, I highly recommend it. At the end, we actually say, if you are going to go, here's a few pointers for you. So we give that tourist tips, if you will, traveler's tips. So, like I said, this is my buddy, Conrad Franz, who was with me the entire time. Let's get to it now. Conrad Franz, welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
Doing well, Buck. Seraphim, I see a lot of Saint Seraphim behind you, so I might just revert back to that. So I'm sure both are good, but it's great to be here. It's great to be here. It's good to talk about this trip. I've been telling, so many people about this. I've got like my little phone slideshow just on my phone that I've been like showing my friends and family, and I think people are really liking the stories and everything. So I'm glad to be able to, because I think the more we talk about it in the immediate aftermath, we'll remember it better for the longer period of time. And I definitely want to preserve these memories, forever. So I think this is both for our personal edification is great. And I know the audience enjoys it because we did a recent stream with Father Peter and David, and Buck was going to join us, but he was traveling to Sin City, Las Vegas.
The irony.
But we had a great discussion, and I'm ready to look forward to talk to my fellow Texan about it, because we were very much on the same page about a lot of things on the trip.
Yes, indeed. I was talking to Father Peter's brother last night in my private Zoom with my supporters, and I mentioned Greek time was a lot different than what we were used to. And he said, that's just Orthodox time. That's Eastern time. Because he said it's similar in Georgia, of course, as well. Just for those watching, someone, I thought people knew this, but someone last night in the stream said, I didn't know Saint Seraphim of Sarov was your patron saint, and it is. And I went by Seraphim basically when we were over the entire time in Mount Athos. So that's what Conrad was referring to. Before we get into our trip, talk about give yourself an intro, talk about the show, and then I'll ask some stuff from there.
I'm the host of World War Now. I host that show with Dimitri Kalugin. Maybe if you're on X, he's at Orthodox Canonist. A lot of people follow him. He's got like 100,000 followers. But I make a show about geopolitics, World War III, specifically through the lens of Orthodox Christian prophecy, which of course is very relevant to Mount Athos. We have been on Counterflow, me and Dimitri, talking about that very subject. So be sure to check out that great episode. That's a timeless conversation we already had with Buck. So don't miss that one. But yeah, I'm a humble Substacker. I'm doing that sort of full time now for the past few months after having been working in conservative media, generally speaking, while simultaneously doing my own thing. So here we are now, independent, as it were. But yeah, a lot of my content focuses on things that the people that talk about it the most are like on Mount Athos with, things that Elder Ephraim says, St. Paisios says. And before I went to Mount Athos, I also was in Cyprus with Father Peter and his family, which allowed us to meet Metropolitan Neophytos of Morphu, who I kind of consider the inspiration for the show World War Now, because a lot of his sermons, especially during COVID, inspired me, and that's why I do what I do. And so we got a lot of World War Now, Counterflow kind of type stuff on this trip, and I think that's part of why Father Peter wanted to invite us specifically, because he knew about our content and knew that it was going to fit well with, what we were interested in. And I mean, I think maybe it's safe to say now who was supposed to be on that trip with us. I'll let you say that, but that's
my man, Alex Jones.
That we fit in that same vein.
Yes, that would have just been something else. Alex Jones on there with us. We'll talk about some stuff that you asked about and whatnot when we were out there, but give us quick updates as we record. I think it's today the 25th. I believe it's the 25th of September. 26th. This will drop this coming Tuesday. What current events should we be aware of right now as far as the World War Now lexicon goes?
Well, we're at a very precarious moment, to the point where anything I say could very much change by the time this is posted, because of the dramatic nature of the events going on in the Holy Land right now. We're like every 10 minutes, there's a new update, literally. And it seems that despite the best efforts of the United States and not even the most moderate centrist, everybody besides the quote unquote extreme right Zionists in Israel are wanting some kind of ceasefire in Lebanon and Gaza to cool things down. It appears that Netanyahu and the Likudniks and Smotrich and Ben Gvir, these other kind of Kahanist extremists, are insisting on a ground invasion into Lebanon. So there is a genuine chance that by the time people are listening to this, that ground invasion has already occurred or is even more likely down the pipeline. So I think people need to be paying attention to that. Of course, Russia, Ukraine, it does appear that is generally, I don't want to say dying down, but the inevitability of the Russian victory is becoming more clear. So there are a lot of people that are interested, including people in the Trump campaign, unfortunately, that are interested in toning down the heat in Russia, Ukraine, to ramp up the heat against Hezbollah and Iran in Israel and all those countries in the Levant and Palestine. So that's definitely the biggest front right now. We were in Mount Athos, probably as close as a lot of people have even been to that part of the world in the midst of all of this, which was interesting. I was down in Cyprus, like I said, which is a 15-minute flight to Tel Aviv. So very close to the region. And I was able, and again, this was stuff, not that the trip was anything about politics, but multiple times on the trip, we heard people say that, yeah, we think that we're kind of on the precipice of the big Third World War that a lot of our saints have spoken about. We would be remiss not to say that there was that added, that was in the air.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even, well, we'll get to the earthquake, even weird things regarding the earthquakes and how many that have been happening there. But let me ask you this, when you got the invite from Father Peter, what were your thoughts?
Well, my initial thoughts were, there's no, like, even though I didn't know if it was going to work, deep down, I was like, I can't say no. Like, I have to at the very least lean into this, even though I had no idea. And of course, I was excited, and I had always thought that I wasn't going to make it to Mount Athos until I kind of put something together on my own with probably some friends of mine, and we all made a big plan and everything. And I didn't expect, there was always something also, like, I did want to go with somebody that would be able to give me sort of a deeper experience. And maybe that's my own narcissism. I don't want to go and just get the normal experience. I want to go and do it in a cool way, I guess. And I don't know if there's anything 100% wrong with that, but I was like, this is going to be a big opportunity, because I knew that Father Peter was sort of an Athos expert, one of the foremost Athonite, people in America, honestly, as far as people that kind of talk about their experiences there. So I knew that I was going to make it real. And I heard that you and David were going to go, which was another that encouraged me even more to like lean into it, because I'd already met you, but David, I've been friends with David online since 2019 and had never met in person, obviously being out in Turkey. So that was another big incentive for me to make it out there. And then, of course, Father Peter invited me to Cyprus and said that we'd be able to meet and I'd be able to talk to Metropolitan Neophytos. And all those things I said before were enough of a reason to like do everything I could to make it. And then when I heard that, I was like, all right, like right then when he said that, I started the process of making it happen and getting my flights and sorting everything out, because I realized this was going to be a once in a lifetime opportunity. And if things are really going to get bad in the next literal few months, who knows when I'd ever be able to make it over to Cyprus and Mount Athos again. And I'm not saying that's guaranteed. I hope not. I hope everybody listening to this, of course, gets the opportunity to go over there and not get exploded. But I think it was a lot of things were there. And I was like, this is definitely, I don't want to say this is from God, but this is definitely something that I should lean into.
Mm-hmm. There's even a part of me that felt like, I mean, we're small potatoes as far as content, stuff goes. It's not like we're Joe Rogan or anything, or even Jay Dyer, but there was a feeling, it's like, for whatever reason, he's asking people like yourself and me, I have a little bit of a responsibility to say yes, because it's like, imagine how many people listening to your show or my show would be like, what? Yeah, I want to go. So it's almost like I'm saying yes to this. I won't lie, I was nervous. It was like, geez, that's a
me
big
too. It was
deal.
like 2 weeks out. I was like, I thought I needed more time to like prepare, like in body and like in spirit and in like literal physical body. I was like afraid of like all sorts of issues. I was totally like nervous.
Yeah. But so for people listening that are thinking about a trip or whatnot, and you feel, I don't know if I'm worthy or I'm nervous. Everyone feels, well, at least Conrad and myself feel that way. Let me see here. Where can we go with this? We are going to do a slideshow, but not quite yet. What did you have preconceptions that were shattered about Mount Athos? Or was it as you thought?
In a way, I feel like I've been adequately prepared by the materials that I had read and my own priests I know people have been to Mount Athos, in the sense that like if you talk to the right people and smart people that will guide you, they're going to tell you like, look, you can't go in with some kind of crazy expectation to like experience a miracle, or you're like, if anything, you need to go in and expect that it could be as unpleasant as like a mid camping trip. Like, you know what I mean? Like that might be something that you experience. And I went into it expecting that I wouldn't get much sleep, that I would be tired, that there's a good chance I might not. I have a lot of allergies. I was accepting there might be a chance I'm not eating that much food. So I was kind of not preparing for the worst, but very much setting my expectations to not then be like, man, this sucked. Like, why were they mean to me? The monks were rude, like all this, that, and the other. But that being said, like it if I hadn't had that, it still would, like, it was great. Like it was something that there was multiple people that I met that I felt a holiness coming off of them. There was, in my exhaustion and in my stupor at these 10-hour vigils, I felt, I was very much aware of my own sin and these other things. So it was very much a spiritually edifying experience in that regard. And I think the fact that Father Peter took us around so many places, and in a way we got pushed to a certain level of physical exhaustion because of the extent of the trip. I felt that even if, for example, I'm somehow never able to go back, which of course I don't think is true, and I hope isn't true, I think it would be a better trip than a lot of people could hope for on their first Athos trip. And I got a lot out of it. And the fact that I do what I do as, for lack of a better word, an Orthodox journalist, I think this was an important thing that God provided for me here as a young man. So I'm very grateful for it, for sure.
Yeah, I called it a spiritual boot camp. And because it was in that aspect, there were also aspects of it that were like a regular boot camp.
Oh yeah.
The walking, it was, I kept saying it was humbling, and it pushed me out of a, let's say, comfort zone, physically, spiritually, mentally, just a lot of those things, the sleeping,
Yeah, me and Buck were both like, "Where's the AC, man?" Like,
yes,
we're in Texas. And I had this little fan, and Buck would be like, "Give me like 20 minutes of fan time, man." Yes. And I'd be like, "All right, here's the fan."
Yeah, and so for those listening, I don't know, we're going to say things that many of you are very familiar with, and then we'll say things that there's people that don't know much about it. So I'm covering all grounds here, but there is no AC in anywhere over there that I'm aware of. That we certainly didn't experience it. If there's AC on Mount Athos, Conrad and myself don't know about it. Showering sometimes. So a lot of walking. Conrad had very smart gear on, and it was fun though. Talk about what.
Whoa! We can't say the F word. No fun.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. Father Peter doesn't like that. It was enjoyable, and the hard parts were enjoyable, and I think that's orthodoxy to its life, really, to a large part. But some of the times in America, people have lost that anything, wanting to do something challenging, but good stuff always comes of that. Once a month, my supporters of this show and myself and a special guest have a Zoom meeting. It's not recorded, it's not posted, it's just private. It's between you guys, the guest, and myself. I do this because it means a lot for you guys who support me by showing me that this show means a lot to you. I love talking with you. I look at it as like a benefit for people that support the show, but it's really a benefit for me. I get to know you guys and have an off-the-record discussion with our guest, and sometimes topics you don't want to necessarily have all the ins and outs discussed online, if you know what I mean. So to be in this group, please go to patreon.com/counterflow and donate $5 or more per month. And it gets you in this club. We do it once a month. It's a great time. It's great people. They're all smarter than me. So that's an upgrade from what you're used to. I can tell you that. The guests are always guests that people want to hear from. A lot of you guys will be familiar with many of the guests. Father Turbo's done it. Father Deacon Ananias has done it. David Patrick Harry's done it. My own priest, Father Ignatius, has done it. Father Moses McPherson's done it. It's a very good time, and I think you guys would enjoy it. If you love this content, please go to patreon.com/counterflow, $5 or more per month. Thank you. Talk about you got to have, we all did, but the importance or experience or thoughts on your one-on-one time with Father Peter just throughout the time. It's not like, for people listening, he didn't take us into a room and sit with us necessarily, although that did happen, but just, people lose each other on the mountain when we're walking, and you end up kind of breaking off in different groups. Talk about the time, one-on-one time with someone like Father Peter Heers.
Well, I had some great opportunities just in Cyprus as well, where it was literally just me, Father Peter, and his two sons, Gregory and Panayotis. So I'm not going to, I won't get too intimate about people's details, but I had a great time observing the Heers family dynamic. The Gregory and Panos and Father Peter, they're a lovely, I believe they're a lovely family. I hope they wouldn't mind me saying that about them. And I think they, people may think Father Peter, he's very serious, he's very austere, but he's a fun dad. I don't know how to say it. Like, he's a good guy. Maybe he doesn't want me to say that either. He doesn't like the F word, but he's a good man. Hanging out with his family was very edifying. I felt like I got a good example of how I would want to lead an Orthodox family as well. But we had some great times with the jokes and everything. Because Father Peter, people might think he can't take a joke, but he can. And there's some funny moments. And I think but at the same time, we were able to discuss a lot of issues. And Father Peter is very surprisingly, again, maybe I'm talking to a bad preconceived. I'm assuming people are thinking a certain way about Father Peter, but this is the Buck Johnson Counterflow show, so I'm sure people are much more reasonable about these things. But I think we were able to talk about so many broad issues. I got to, I think Father Peter asked me to explain mewing and looks maxing at one point, which was,
I had to have you explain mewing as well.
I was like, am I really going to explain this like TikTok brain rot tier stuff here on Mount Athos? But we had a wonderful time. And I think Father Peter explicitly, as someone who can translate Greek and as somebody that,
yes,
the fact that we went to so many places that he had already been and could give us so many more details about was wonderful. And for example, like St. Nilos's cave, which I know you have some pictures of in the slideshow. Yes. He experienced that for the first time as well, despite having been to Athos, 40, 50 times. So
yes,
being able to experience something new like that with him, and it helped me understand the gravity and the impressiveness of some of these places, while also being there with somebody that was so familiar with it that we kind of were able to not get as many bumps in the road. It was quite the experience. And and hanging out with Father Peter, he's very, especially as somebody who has a public ministry, he very much wants to, even though a lot of people may not like what he has to say, he wants those people to, he loves those people, and he wants those people to, at the very least, understand what he believes is the true, authentic tradition of Mount Athos. And if anybody, I think that was something that I saw very explicitly, that is a very true intention, I guess you could say.
Yes.
I've never seen someone, Father Peter clearly is at home on Mount Athos. That's something you definitely notice. And in Cyprus as well, he is never happier than to just be spending time talking to traditional monks. Like we stayed at this skeet so there's this beautiful monastery that we went to, and I've told Buck this already. It was probably just because of the expectations, but this monastery, we had no expectation to even stay there. We were staying there to try to be closer to Metropolitan Neophytos, so we only would have to drive 45 minutes instead of 2 hours when we went to see him. And this place was recommended to us by Metropolitan Tychikos of Paphos, who had invited Father Peter to speak at a university down in Paphos, which is on the southern side of Cyprus. And we stayed at this place, and it was a skeet that the monks had abandoned because they built a larger monastery to fulfill their needs. But it was this beautiful, well-maintained, wonderful skeet. Air conditioning, big, despite being in the literal middle of nowhere, like really out there was AC. So I slept like a baby and a shower. And we had this skeet, and we're there, and I'm looking around. It's like 1 a.m. and we're all trying to go to bed. We have to wake up early the next morning. But Father Peter is like out there just talking to the monks about everything, this, that, and the other, and they all want to talk to him, and they're all talking about church stuff. And I'm wandering around, and then I see in their library this huge icon of Elder Ephraim just in the middle of nowhere in Cyprus, and it's like, wow, this is wonderful. And then later we went to the full monastery where those monks had moved and talked to the abbot and saw some incredible relics. They had a whole chapel dedicated to Elder Ephraim with the jawbone of St. Dionysius, the Areopagite. They had a huge reliquary with the threads from the robe of Christ, St. Joachim and Anna. They had a big bust of Tsar Nicholas II. It was quite the place. The abbot there he has prayers that he had written to read over people that came to the monastery to repent of getting the vaccine. It was quite a wonderful place. And that place caught me so off guard that, I was so impressed. I bought a bunch of prayer ropes, and I bought this icon there of Saint Philomenos, who people may know, of Jacob's Well, who was killed by a radical Zionist in the 70s in the Holy Land. And he's from Cyprus. So I bought this because the monastery I was at was very close to where he was born. So I bought this icon of a saint. There's an Ether Hour episode on World War Now about the saint. So I recommend everybody check that out. But this place blew my mind. And Father Peter, he may not like me saying this, but he is a bit of a celebrity in these circles insofar as if you're walking around, and whether they're monastics that have heard of him or they're people on the boat at Athos that have watched his content, a lot of people are like, "Oh, are you Father Peter Heers? Hello." He was probably one of the few people that would actually happen to on Mount Athos,
right?
Which is probably a very unique experience, to say the least.
Yeah, I guess it shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. Even monks that had never met him, they would hear sometimes that, wait, Peter Heers? So it was interesting to watch that. We'll start this slideshow. I want to show this to some people and we'll kind of discuss it. If you're listening on only audio, I recommend going to the YouTube version of this, but we are going to talk about, it's not just we're not going to sit in silence and go, oh, that was neat. We'll talk about some of the stuff. I'm going to ask Conrad some questions. So you should be able to get some stuff out of this that way as well. And let's do this. Share. Let's hope that my Gen X self can do this. All right. Can you see it, Conrad?
I can.
Excellent. This also, by the way, for people listening and for you, Conrad, this is not in a sequential order of like us getting there and then going through the trip. And that's my fault. I asked my friend Mono. He did this slideshow for me. And he said, do you want me to put it in sequential order or anything? I was like, oh, no, I didn't want to trouble him. So anyway, this happens to be one of the last churches that we went into on the trip. And I think I can speak for Conrad, but certainly for me, this was the best iconography that I saw the entire time.
And in my opinion, this is pretty much the most beautiful modern iconography I've ever seen in my entire life. It was incredible.
Yes. And so this was the church that St. Paisios went to, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Conrad?
Well, this is actually the church. This is the church of St. Paisios.
That's what it is. Okay. See, I was
the person who was buried here was Father Isaac, who was the one who wrote the biography of St. Paisios, pretty much his main spiritual child. And it's not that far from, of course, his cell, which if you look at the bottom left of this video, you see that little house with the tin roof thing. That is an iconographic depiction of the cell that we then went to. That was his literal cell with his chapel that he was in. And this church is built in his honor, not that far from it, at the grave of one of his main spiritual children.
That's right. Okay. And we will show pictures of that cell as well.
And this is where we met with Elder Euphemios, of course.
Yes. Which was, yeah. So this, if I remember, I think this is inside his cell. Is that correct? Is that what this one is?
That looks like Father Peter's house.
It is. Sorry. Yeah. I hope I can show this. This is Father Peter's house just outside the little village where he was a priest for 20 years or so. Now I guess he's renting it out because there's a wonderful family there. And I thought this was so neat. This was in his house there, which is completely off grid, very based setup that he had there.
Yeah, if you look behind the curtain, there's actually I didn't look, I saw it from the outside, but this is just in their house. Like if you go outside, you're in their living room. And behind the iconostasis, there's a window that Father Peter has been able to use. He's been able to reach out the window if someone needs to hand him something that he needs behind the altar. Someone can there's like a window out into the rest of the house.
Yes.
And right to the left side of this picture is a hand-painted icon of St. John Chrysostom, and the little chapel in the house is dedicated to St. John. I remember we did Compline there. It was quite wonderful.
This is about to be, I think, more of that beautiful iconography. Yes. And as you and David were talking about on your live cast, all of the iconography at the top of this one, around the
ring,
edges,
this outer ring here,
yes,
is all of the Old Testament appearances of Christ, which was, that's some fantastic, because I was a big, when I was becoming Orthodox, I was in the J. Dyer, and one of his big apologetic tools are the Old Testament theophanies. So this was near and dear to my heart.
Yes. Then we're about to get to. Is this where we get our certificates? So just for people watching,
I could grab my certificate really quick. I could show it. I know exactly where it is.
Yeah.
Let me grab that.
So you got to get a certificate from this. It's basically like a ticket, if you will, but it's pretty big. It's about the size of this thing in the window here. And I'm going to frame mine, but it's basically your certificate ticket to Mount Athos. And I believe it's got the length of time you're going to be staying and whatnot. But yeah, it's pretty neat to get that. Conrad's going to show that.
Yeah, it's your Athos passport, because technically Mount Athos is it's an independent republic of Greece. So it has a bit of its own, the abbots and the council are its own. I'm sure Buck has some pictures when we get to Cardias of the governmental building, but here it is. It says, it says your name, Conrad Franz, and it has the dates you're supposed to be there. And usually those are only issued for 3 days, but you can get extensions from like the abbots and everything. So we were there for 8 days, but this says 3, so I overstayed my visa.
Just more beautiful iconography in this one. All right. This is us arriving on the boat, I believe, to start
Oronopoli.
Okay. There'll be various stages of facial hair in this one as well. This was at the last place we stayed, Conrad.
Yeah, this is at Philotheo.
Philotheo, that's right.
With I forget that monk's name, but he talked to us for a while in one of the many nice sitting rooms.
Yes. Boat getting out to Mount Athos. A little sound for everyone here.
That's people just saw, that was like our first actual view of Mount Athos itself, like the mountain.
Hi. What's up?
Hey, there's me.
That was Conrad.
With much more beard than I have right now.
Talk about this one. You guys mentioned it on your live stream.
Oh, this is one of my favorite parts. So this is facing the back side of the Church of St. Paisios, and this is on the right. If you're looking at the door, on the left was what I was describing that showed his cell and him talking to pilgrims. This is, of course, his repose. And you see the priest on the left there performing the funeral. That priest is still alive, and his son is a monastic at the monastery where this church is on Mount Athos at the Skeet. So he comes into church and sees his father. But the style on these specific ones on the back is specifically the Cretan style of iconography. And then the rest of it is, I've heard, sort of a mix of Macedonian and Cretan style, which I think was part of why we found it so unique. This style, I think, is beautiful as well. It's identifiable, but the rest of it was the whole church was incredible.
I think this is at the Bulgarian, the first place we stayed.
Yes,
okay.
It was, which was actually pretty nice compared to other. I didn't. we got a bit of a scary welcome. There had been a miscommunication, and we didn't be quite, but they were very hospitable and gave us a wonderful place to stay.
Yeah, I wanted people to kind of check out, because I had some let's say, it wasn't totally incorrect, but I kind of was thinking before we get there that it's like we're literally on a cot, like outside every place we were going to be. So as you guys can see, there was some of that, or there, we avoided some things that could have been worse, but this was, I would say, kind of typical of a few of the places.
Maybe like slightly above average, because this one had a shower, but
that's right.
The shower wasn't great at this place either compared to some others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cold showers. Back to that same church. I loved this iconography, is why I got so many shots of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, which one was this, Conrad? I cannot tell.
This was at Zagrafu. This is the Bulgarian.
Yep.
This is also new iconography. This is a new chapel they're about to be using more regularly, and they let us in to look at it. And I don't know if you have any pictures of it, but if you look, back towards the exit and down on the right side of the walls, there's the Zagrafu martyrs, which is, we recently celebrated their feast and everything like that, there's a memorial to these 40 martyrs that were burned to death by the papists for not accepting the union in the 13th century. So,
yes. And it was just part of this, why, outside of just the pure beauty of how this looks, is why I took the picture. There's nothing as we walk into this, say when the doors are shut, that even hints at what you're about to see in here. It's like these humble areas, and then all of a sudden you open this up and it's like, oh my God, I've never been to a church this beautiful in America, and it's almost hidden away in here. It's just something else like that.
Totally.
It's warm. Where are we going? What's it called, Father Peter? Seropotamo. Dry River. Australian.
And our friend Nicholas.
Representing Moscow.
And there's David trailing behind.
Yes.
Look, everyone's got to appreciate Father Peter. We're all struggling. We're in like athletic wear, tech wear, hiking type stuff. Father Peter's in full cassock, rasa, skufia, and he's chugging along.
Yes.
So
he's older than us. He was wearing shoes that were more appropriate for being in the parish than hiking a trail. And
Gregory's shoes were falling apart.
Yes. Yeah. When I would think this is kind of hard, I would look at Father Peter and I'm like, well, be quiet, Buck. just keep pushing. This was one of the best meals we had. I wanted you to bring this up and have you talk about this really quick.
I would say this was the best meal I had on the whole Holy Mountain. It was between that and the Filofeo mushroom pasta, which I think that was just good because I was like starving to death. I like was going to die if I hadn't eaten that. So objectively speaking, this was delicious. This was cooked by Father Pombo, who's a Russian hieromonk who he was doing some things. Well, he didn't eat any of the food. We ate all the food and he cooked all of it and he didn't eat any of it. And this was at the cell where St. Paisios first saw the holy light. This was really in the middle of nowhere. Like this was pretty deep wilderness. That's Father Yakovos, who probably wouldn't appreciate us showing his picture on the internet, but he'll live.
Yes.
And we were sitting around. That was where we sat, and this was right next door to the physical place where St. Paisios saw the holy light. And if you looked right behind where this picture was taken, there was a huge wall of all of these Russian military saints and whatnot. And Father Pombo is a Russian monastic. He's a Russian nationalist, and actually he is married, and his wife is at a monastery in Ukraine, and he's been on Mount Athos for 10 plus years at this point. And I heard that he perhaps even, encouraged people to perhaps go and volunteer in the Donbass and these types of places. And he's very into Russian nationalism and whatnot. But he seemed like a very holy man as well. And we picked some grapes from their vineyard and ate them.
Yes.
And he cooked us this delicious meal of pasta and I don't know what it's all these boiled vegetable kind of amalgamations, but it was delicious. And I scarfed down that bowl. And he had these delicious homemade pickles. That was the only place we had that, which you get a lot. Like you see that one bowl with the cucumbers, the tomatoes, the onions. That's like everywhere, and it's great. It's refreshing. Yeah. It's kind of keeps you alive at a certain level. That's kind of what you're living on. But then in there were some pickles, and that made it. I love pickles, and that was just a delicious meal. So thank you, Father Pombo. That was some of the best Athonite hospitality.
We're on a walk to Serapatamo.
I still say it wrong.
Serapatamo. Uphill in the heat. But it's fun.
Yeah, you can see me struggling in this video.
It's fun. Father Peter. Conrad. Woo. Young Gregory.
See, I got a good attitude.
Yeah.
Gregory's gonna be like dying and Gregory's just standing there like, let's keep going, man.
This was soon after that amazing meal. This was one of the neatest looking places. I don't know what you would even call this, but the beauty was just fantastic here.
Yeah, this was the cave of St. Hilarion the Georgian. And Father Yakovos was explaining so many of these stories to us. And you probably have some pictures from Father Yakovos' cell, so we could talk about St.
I do.
Gerondios. I just put up the icon card he gave us of St. Gerondios in my icon corner. But yeah, so many of these places, you just like wandered through the wilderness and it's like, oh, and here's where this miracle worker lived. And
yes.
And you're like none of the stuff's even really on a map. And so it's amazing. So you feel like you like this is going to sound LARPy. This is the closest you get to feel like you truly enter like a totally other world, and are kind of got to learn the lore. I don't know. It's very, very fascinating.
Yeah. And just for those watching, this is our friend Nicholas who lives in Moscow, and right here is Orthodox Ethos' own, really the hard work behind the scene outside of Father Peter and Gregory. This is our friend Justin.
Justin was always outpacing us.
No kidding.
On the hike, and I always tell myself it's because he's like half my weight. That's why I'm able to. That's why
he's half our weight now. He's good at this. Do you remember this?
Me coping.
Do you remember where this was, Conrad?
That's the St. Paisios Church.
That is
the icon, the right
that's
of
the
Christ.
Other side.
There's St. Paisios. So
that's right.
Yeah, it's the same. That's the iconostasis, and
there we go.
The dome that we showed at the very beginning, like the first picture on this slideshow, was right above this.
Yes. Father Peter back at that little cave we were just...
Hey, Conrad. Just a couple of jackasses. A couple of goobers.
This is us on the mules.
Yes.
So we can finally convince Father Peter to hop on the mule at one point.
Yeah, there's going to be several shots at the mules. That was one of the most fun, I shouldn't say fun, most enjoyable parts.
Yeah, David, I'm glad David survived. He barely made it. But our group, we were slightly ahead of David's group, so we were good.
We were safe, yeah.
That's a great picture. We all got, I think a lot of us got individual pictures there. That was one of the best overlooks.
Yes, I think for the thumbnail for this episode, I'm going to use the shot of all of us at this cross is my plan.
Speaking of crosses, here's this cross. Metropolitan Neophytos of Morphu gave me this. This was I got this in Cyprus. He said this was hand carved by one of his spiritual children secretly living as a Christian in Saudi Arabia. And he gave a bunch of them to exorcist priests that he knows. And this was the last one on his desk. And he gave it to me. So quite the honor. So I'm grateful.
Yes. And here's us walking with Father Iakovos. He and Father Peter were very close. And at this point, he kind of took over as we were following him as to where to go, basically. And of course, the rest of us goobers had no clue.
This is right after we separated from David and Panayotis, who went to Elder Theologos, and they had a much more comfortable evening, and their walk the next day was much easier. So even though, we got to venerate some amazing sites that they missed out on, David, he made the right call because I respected him a lot for that because he's so focused on the mission towards Turkey that he wanted to go meet with this elder who specifically missionizes Turkey. So David went on his own little adventure, and we then went on a Lord of the Rings trek. This is the beginning of this. I think that was like the beginning of this.
Yes, we got coming up as the view from afar, I believe, that Gregory took with the motion shot. It's pretty amazing. But I don't know that at this moment here that I knew exactly what we were about to be encountering, but it seemed comfortable at this point so far. More of that iconography. I told you guys that's my favorite stuff that was in that specific church. Conrad, is this St. Anne?
That was one of the best pictures of me of the whole trip.
Yeah, where was I think this was called St. Anne's.
This is St. Anne's. This was so when we got on the mules, me and Buck were like, right when we saw those mules, we didn't have any pride. I think we didn't have any pride. Okay, we were like, I'm not walking. I'm getting. Nope. If there's an option to get on the mule, I'm getting on the mule.
Yeah, so I may not have had pride. I might have had sloth in me or something like that. But
and Father Peter and Gregory and our friend Father Gorgondios, who was always going to walk, they were like, no, we're walking. Father Peter and Gregory were like, we're walking 100%. And this was where they walked up to. This was our first stop. And we got, for those that don't know, every place you stop where there's a monk at all, you're going to get hospitality, which usually looks something like you get some ouzo, you get some lukumi, which, for us Anglos is called Turkish delight, which you can't be saying that on Mount Athos. Yep. And so you get all of that. Sometimes there'd be, some concentrate or something or some coffee that you could get. And so that's kind of what you're getting. And right through this gate, that was where we received the hospitality at St. Anne's. Everyone, even the people on the mules were sweating. So we were like, all right, Father Peter, you're going to get on the mule. We basically forced him for his own health to get on the mule, which he didn't want to. He wants to be a real pilgrim, which we'll give him the credit for. But the saddles that were on for the mules were uncomfortable enough to where Father Peter felt it was an adequately ascetic experience.
It was ascetic. Yeah, exactly.
This place had some amazing views, and I bought, what did I buy here? I bought the cross that had like something that was blessed on the belt of the Theotokos. That's out in my living room. This had a great store as well. And the store had air conditioning. Remember that?
That's right.
The icon store here had AC. I remember that.
Yes. There it is without Conrad.
I love those kinds of accoutrements, those details at every entrance, and that view was one of the best views. We had
that was the same place. Right there. Yes. Here is us again. There's going to be a lot of this because it was just such a neat experience.
Well, the problem is I've looked at all the videos I had, and I made sure to get a video like at the most precarious part, and the video just doesn't do it justice.
No.
The verticality of some of the places, like if the mule fell, it was over, man.
It was
just 100% over.
Yes, and it almost did fall with David on it.
Incredible.
David's mule literally slipped, and his saddle was on the side of the mule. Justin watched it all happen. He told us about it. And
David was horizontal,
and everybody thought it might have been over for a second.
There it is.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just talking about. That's very typical Athonite hospitality. You sit down, you're hiking, you're exhausted. You really just want some water, but no, here it's time for ouzo and lukumi, but it's good, it's delicious, and they do have water right there. I was making a joke. That's a big pitcher of water. So
and the green,
what you need. But
yes,
the lukumi, I thought my favorite lukumi is the red one. I always thought the red was the best. This was fairly common. The yellow. There was also green and a few others, but I thought the red was the best personally.
One of the best parts about having Conrad usually close to me on these parts was often he would go, "You can have mine," regarding the liquor. And so I got to have two.
I was always so dehydrated that I felt that if I took this liquor, because I know I'm not a big ouzo fan in general, so I knew if I'm taking this down, I'm afraid I'm going to throw up and lose all my water. So I'm like, here, man, take it. And Buck was always happy to ready to go.
Yes, I didn't want to be rude and say no, so you got to do these things.
Of course. And I wanted him to secretly do it so I could pretend to. I didn't want to be inhospitable. I didn't want to be.
Yeah, that was a shot off that side there.
And at this point, I had made the decision to sit sideways like the guide, which everyone else should have done, in my opinion. Saved my groin. It was great. I was so grateful that I decided to sit side saddle.
I don't remember this monk's name, but I got to see two sides of him. He's really extremely sweet, as you can see in this picture. He sat with us and talked politics. He was really a neat man. After I was chastised by this gentleman during the liturgy, and Conrad knew something I did not know. Don't cross your legs like a female while you're on Mount Athos in church. Father Peter told me, well, real men don't do that anywhere, but which is a fair point. But this gentleman made me very aware of the rule that I shouldn't be crossing my legs like a woman during church.
Well, it's so funny. I saw him walk over to you. We're all tired. We're in the service. It's late at night. It was probably like 3 a.m. I don't even know. But or maybe it was earlier in the day. I can't remember which time. I get this one mixed up with Filotheo, but we're there. And Buck's sitting there and he's got his legs crossed. And this monk stands up. He'd literally been like asleep. And then he just stands up from slumber, walks over and makes some gestures at Buck. And I see Buck just stand up instinctively. Because that's what you do. If you see something, if you think you're doing something wrong, you immediately just stand up. Because ultimately that's what you're supposed to be doing, is standing. But they have these chairs. These services are very long. Nobody's going to actually get mad at you if you, of course, take a seat, which everybody pretty much does. And he stands up and I just walk right over to him. And I said, I feel so bad for how I said it, but I didn't know how else to say it. I was like, yeah, they don't want you to cross your legs. I was going to come over and ask you, but I didn't want you to think I was being weird. So,
I was like, well, I was
afraid I'd go over and be like, hey man, uncross your legs. And then no one would ever come and correct him. I'd be like, was that even true? Were you just messing with me? Did you tell me that? So I felt bad because I was literally seeing you do it. I'm like, I wonder if one of them is going to come over and tell Buck to stop doing that.
He did.
But then later on in the trip, I fell asleep in my chair at during one of the services and crossed my legs in my sleep. And a monk came over to me and was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Yeah. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah. It's not that you were sleeping, it's that your legs were crossed.
Yep.
There we go.
I was impressed with the agility of these mules on some of these trails.
Incredible, yes. I got a lot of shots of the cats. I kept jokingly calling it Mount Athos, but they were everywhere. This was one of the epic shots of the trip. Can you explain what we're doing here?
Oh yeah, David got this amazing shot as we had this is at this is and then there were 5, you know what I mean? We kept shedding people as we go along. And we're going and we lose our Latvian friend, Matthew. We lose him a few days before this, and then we lose Panayotis, who gives up. And then I guess Gregory's just not in this picture, but who else did we? Oh yeah, and then Isaiah and Justin stayed behind at Filotheo. So at this point, it's just a few of us, and we're at St. Andrew's Skeet, which is, it just feels so weird calling it a skeet because it's bigger than multiple of the monasteries that you go to, but it's not one of the 20 governing monasteries of Mount Athos, so it's considered just a skeet. As you can tell, it's very Russian, but since the 20th century, there were no Russians there, and it has been repopulated now by Greeks. The previous, I guess, not abbot, but head elder Yeronda of St. Andrews was Elder Ephraim, a spiritual son of the Elder Ephraim of Arizona that we all know. He died just a year ago. And so it's a Russian-built place populated by a few Greek monks, and it's massive. So even though it looks like it should be at the status of a monastery, when you stay there, you realize why it isn't, because there's probably only 15 to 20 monks there. Yep. It's way too big. It's way too big for them to have restored everything. And in the rooms we're staying in, the electricity is run by an obvious wire, coming through the door. There's no action. They clearly haven't centrally wired everything yet. They don't actually have it all in tip-top shape. However, the church inside is beautiful. We worship at one of the churches, literally the building we're walking towards on the 2nd floor, 3rd floor. Yeah. That's where the church was. To the right of us is St. Andrew's Church, which used to be the biggest church in the Balkans. And that was amazing. We went in there and were able to venerate the skull of St. Andrew the Apostle, which was a wonderful experience. All of these places had amazing relics to venerate. If there's specific pictures of some more of them, we'll obviously recount those. The hand of St. John Chrysostom, all sorts of things like this. But this place was, I thought, and I hope I'm not being offensive when I say this, but like I thought it was the scariest place we stayed. Like at night, like we walked out in the halls, I was kind of like, it was a little spooky, I would say, but it was the monks there were very holy, and we heard a lot of very amazing stories about the abbot Elder Ephraim, and we were able to venerate his grave. And Gregory had actually been at his funeral just a year before, so it was quite the interesting connection. For those that don't know, this is like 300 yards outside of Cardias, which is like the only town on Mount Athos. So this is near most people when they go to Mount Athos, they go to Daphne, they go to Cardias, and then they go to the monastery from there. We did this all in reverse, went to all the monasteries in the wilderness, and then ended up at Cardias at the very end. So here we are right at the end. And the next day, we ended up leaving. But before we left, of course, we spent the day going to see St. Paisios' cell. We walked through Kutlamusio Monastery and bought a few things in Cardias as well. So this is near the end of our journey, but it was definitely an epic picture.
Yes. This, I wanted to get on here really quick. This was at the cell of St. Paisios, and he had a vision of the Theotokos, and I believe if I remember correctly, he described it to an iconographer and they painted it as he saw it. Is that correct?
Well, actually, he saw the vision of the Theotokos, and this icon was already in his church, and he looked at it and said, this is exactly what
this is it.
Like.
Okay.
This icon is what it looked like. The other one, maybe you have it, was the picture of Christ. That was the vision that he saw and then described to the nuns of Suroti Monastery, which wasn't far from Father Peter's house. And they painted the icon, and it still exists. It's an icon you can buy. It's interesting because in it, Christ has blue eyes.
That's right.
And this is the other side of St. Andrew's. This is like the entranceway. You can tell the similar Russian architecture, but despite being Russian, you still see the Roman Empire, the Byzantine, forgive me for saying Heers family, but the Byzantine flag.
Yes.
Which you see everywhere on Mount Athos.
Texans on the boat.
Yeah, we decided to get this picture because this was our first view of the actual mountain. Like this is when you get far enough on the boat where you can actually see the top of, again, the whole peninsula is called Mount Athos, but as you can see in the background, that peak is, Mount Athos. Like that's the top of the mountain.
Yes, and I've taken advantage of keeping my sleeves up for the last few minutes of this entire trip.
That's the that's the similar iconography that was, I think, at the beginning of the slideshow at St.
Here we go. Look at those guys.
God's goofiest pilgrims.
Yes. Give us a rundown who we see here.
Let's go left to right. So we've got our boy Isaiah.
Who got baptized there.
Who did get baptized at Philotheo. And I don't know if he would want me to say this on the video, but he, I think, has some monastic aspirations. He's a very kind and humble young man. I had a great time talking to him. His spiritual father is Bishop Basil of Wichita, who, before he retired, was my bishop here in Texas as an Antiochian. So he's a good young man. Him and Justin were always ahead of us on the trail. So
that's Justin back here.
He just didn't have that much stuff in his backpack as well. He wore like the same 3 pairs of clothes, I feel, the whole time, which, good on him for doing a much more ascetic endeavor. But I was like, man, my backpack was packed to the brim. It was killing my back and everything. You saw me and Buck had to buy those satchels to even put other things in that we wanted to buy. Our bags were so full. So we were packing a little too heavy. And even then, I felt like I had done, the minimum of what I could bring. So there's Isaiah. Then I guess there's me and Buck right there. Obviously, yours truly, you know who we are. Down in front of the cross, that's Nicholas, who is an Australian convert from Lutheranism. He's been Orthodox for over a decade now. And him and his wife, who's Russian, they live in Moscow, Russia itself. Too bad we only just met each other. It would have been great to have hung out with him when I was in Moscow, but now we've got the connection. He's a great man. He was much more prayerful than me. I'll put it that way on the trip. Not that me and Buck, we did our best, but I felt that he was more in the spirit of silence. Sometimes we would get caught idle talking, that kind of thing. Oh, yes. And then next to the right of me behind the cross, that's Panayotis, Father Peter's middle son, who is 19 years old. He's wearing that shirt because those most of the shirts he had, he just got done with his service in the Greek army. And he and Father Peter hadn't seen each other in a while. And we reunited all of us on Cyprus, which was super cool to see. Me and him got to know each other pretty well. Of course, to the right of him, you've got Justin, who we talked about. He's sort of the director of operations of Orthodox Ethos and Uncut Mountain Press. This was his second time on Mount Athos. He had done a fairly similar trip with Father Peter the year before. Directly in front of Justin, we've got David, who, if you watch my stream with Father Peter and Dimitri about our trip, David is there with us. David Erhan, of course. If you're here, you probably know who he is. Noted theology YouTuber. He has really done a good job debunking a lot of the Monophysite stuff from the Orientals. He's made a lot of just great Orthodox apologetics videos. When I was becoming Orthodox, his videos were very helpful to me. So
and we just booked.
David. Me and David have been.
We just
great
booked
friends.
him on this show.
Yeah,
So-
you should.
we just did. I just did. We
That's
are
great.
a few weeks.
I got to watch it because David, me and David have been friends online on Discord for years and years and years. So the fact that David was coming on this trip was it was definitely a big plus for me coming on the trip as well. And then, of course, to the right of David, we've got Gregory, the oldest Heers' son, 23 years old. He has been on Ether Hour. If you've listened to our episode about St. John Vitatsis, we just recorded yesterday part 2 of that. It's one of our longest episodes of Ether Hour that we've ever done. So stay tuned for that. He was honestly more of our translator than Father Peter because
Yes.
Gregory is well-versed in the ancient Greek. He's technically also a theology student. He wants to be a priest himself someday. I hope I'm not spilling too many beans here, but he is a wonderful young man, a good friend of mine. Everybody here I consider very close friends at this point. And Gregory, he's going to be a guest in the World War Now Extended Universe forever. And then, of course, in the front, we have the man, the myth, the legend, Father Peter Heers himself. And I don't think he needs an introduction.
No,
because
he does not.
He's a regular guest.
There's that.
That's the icon of Christ that I was just talking about with
Yep.
blue eyes. And it's above what you're seeing is St.
Yep.
Paisios' chair. Like that's where he would sit during the liturgy because St. Paisios wasn't a priest. He was just a monastic. So during the service at the chapel at his cell, that's where he would sit and pray.
Yep, right here.
Amazing.
And there is his cell. I'll try to quit pausing some so we can start getting through this. One of our mini walks here, of course.
That was on the way to meeting, I believe, Elder Euphemios, which all the iconography, like the pictures that are all of that iconography that we've been showing, that's at where Elder Euphemios was. And
Yes.
Maybe I'm exaggerating, but he's probably the most renowned elder on Athos today in some capacity. There was almost 100 Greeks there just waiting to see him. So that was quite the experience.
Was this where we saw that amazing reliquary?
Yeah, that's Saint Panteleimon, the Russian monastery on Mount Athos. That's why I grabbed this icon where I bought there. This is Saint Silwan the Athonite, who we know those who like Father Turbo. Father Turbo loves Saint Silwan. So this is Saint Silwan spent a lot of time at Saint Panteleimon, so I bought this icon of him there. And right to the right of this picture, like you see that icon of Saint Panteleimon on that mosaic on the right of the picture. Inside that building was this amazing reliquary.
Yes.
We got to venerate relics of St. Luke the Evangelist, St. John the Forerunner, St. Seraphim of Sarov, which was awesome for Buck.
Yes.
And I believe there was a few others that I'm forgetting, but it was all amazing. And the architecture was just stunning. I felt like I was back in Russia, despite the fact that I'm in a Mediterranean climate.
Yes.
And I was wearing, if you saw in those other pictures, I was wearing that blue shirt when we came here. So I completely blended into the background. I was like matching the architecture.
It's like you knew.
That's a great picture.
Yeah, that was at the same place. I thought it was neat. Back to that beautiful iconography that's going to be featured throughout. I just loved it a lot. This, I cannot remember.
I think this is either Philotheo or it's Seropotamo.
It's Seropotamo. I'm pretty certain.
Do we want to talk about the earthquake then? I mean,
Yes. We experienced an earthquake at Go ahead. Yeah, I'll let you explain. It was a 4.3. That's the main thing I'm taking away from this. And I felt it. I hadn't felt an earthquake. I don't know if you guys listening know. I lived in Los Angeles when I was younger. And that's the last time I felt one in, let's say, 1989. So it was jolting.
Yeah, so our first night was at Zografu, the Bulgarian monastery. Our second night was then at Seropotamo, which here we are outside of Panteleimon. So this is as we were walking to Seropotamo. So we didn't spend the night at Panteleimon. We venerated the relics there, took a rest, and then kept walking. We go to Seropotamo. We celebrate the liturgy in the evening. We go to bed. We take a great shower. That was my favorite shower, in my opinion, even more than the Philotheo shower.
Yes.
Was those, even though they didn't have soap, it was still that one specific shower with a little nook. It was great. And we're there. And it wasn't even that late. I don't think it was maybe midnight, a little between 11 and midnight maybe. Or I wasn't asleep. I was just kind of in a daze trying to sleep because, again, I was struggling as a Southerner with no air conditioning. And a group of us, me, Buck, Nicholas, Gregory, and David were on the second floor. And then the rest of the group, so Justin, Isaiah, Matthew, Father Peter, were on, Panagiotis were on the third floor, so we're split up 5 and 5. And again, near midnight-ish, I heard it like, I thought I was hearing distant thunder. Like I heard a bit of a rumbling. And then within less than a minute, it was upon us and the whole building is shaking. And it was a solid 10 seconds of like, really, I was scared. Like at the peak of it, I was like, is the ceiling going to come down? Like, I don't know what's going to happen. And I'm like gripping the side of my bed as it's like shaking, and then it calms down and everyone kind of woke up and I was like, I guess that was an earthquake.
Yeah, it's an earthquake.
The aftershocks come in and we're like, oh, there's the aftershock. And it wasn't as dramatic as the earthquake, but we waded through it. I think, even though it was just a 4.3, I think the epicenter of it was like
right where we were,
far away from the monastery, because when I could start hearing it, it was upon us like almost immediately. So it was a bit spooky to say the least. And then the next day at the service, the abbot read a prayer against earthquakes for everybody. That was a whole little service they did for that. And it reminded me of when I was at the metropolis of Morphu meeting with Metropolitan Neophytos on Cyprus before we came to Athos, he has a bunch of these stickers all across where he lives on these load-bearing pillars and stuff. And I'm always forgetting the exact translation from the Greek, but I believe it is like, Christ is with us, stand. And Metropolitan Neophytos has basically said that St. John Chrysostom has told people they need to put this on places and it'll protect you against earthquakes. But this was such a big deal. This wasn't just that earthquakes do happen in this part of the world frequently, but this had been like this was like a culmination of 3 weeks of earthquakes just all over the Holy Mountain. And monks were telling us about prophecies of St. Nilus and about Mount Athos sinking into the sea. We were hearing all this sorts of stuff. And abbots were telling us that they were going to come to America in October, but they didn't know if World War III was going to let them make it. So this is the kind of stuff we're hearing. So we very much felt like we were in the thick of things, as it were. This is walking down to St. Nilus, who I just mentioned, providentially.
Yep. I've got pictures of that in there. I don't even like to say for whatever reason, but I'll say that it was more impactful to me than I anticipated it being when we saw that. It was, the whole thing was...
I mean, we were like down. I mean, that's down on the edge of the world. Like that's like, it's like almost as far away as you can get from women as possible.
Maybe that's why it was impactful. Talk about St. Jacobos' place. Not yet, sir, not yet. Father Jacobos' place. What this was.
For those that don't know, that icon is depicting St. Gerondios, who was a contemporary of St. Gregory Palamas. So this area that Father Jacobos, the hermit friend of Father Peter, this is like over 1,000-year-old legacy of monasticism that he is continuing. And those skulls are monks that had lived there in the 1800s and the early 1900s, and they're now used as a memento mori here in Father Jacobos' ossuary. And I'll try to tell the story as briefly as possible. It's very complex, but long story short, there's oral tradition and written tradition about this place where St. Gerondios was, and they were in conflict with each other. The written tradition stated that there was only one miraculous well that the Theotokos had kind of allowed to spring forward for the monks. This is where we took the mules up to, so it's very hard to get water up from the sea, up from St. Anne's, all the way up to this place where St. Gerondios and his disciples were staying. So he prayed to the Theotokos. She created this miraculous well that gave them water. That unfortunately disrupted their prayer life. They got lazy. They were neglecting the spiritual life. So the Theotokos dried the well up, and they had to go back to hauling water back up and down because that was what they needed spiritually. Finally, they shaped up. Things came together, and the Theotokos eventually restored the well. At least that's what the written tradition says. And as you walk up to the cell, you can still get water from that spring to this very day. That's where we got the ice cold water when you walk up. But what we're looking at now, where this ossuary is, Father Jacobos, when he came to kind of restart the monastic hermitic life here in this area, kind of that St. Gerondios had set down, he was digging into the side of the mountain, and he discovered right under that wood, he showed it to us, he discovered a Byzantine cistern, like a Byzantine era cistern that would have been there to collect water. And he showed it to us. I don't know if there's any pictures of it in the slideshow, but basically the early stages of what would have been actually the original spring in the well that the Theotokos had brought forward. And the oral tradition that had been passed down by the fathers was that there were two wells, that the original one up top had been dried up, and then the new one that she had put forward was down below. The written tradition, because they never found the original one, they just said that it was that one that we had seen down below. But Father Jacobos himself basically discovered that the oral tradition was correct over the written, which that was just fascinating
neat
to me.
Yeah, agreed. That's where we ate at that exact spot. That's our table. There's where we got the mules, basically got the mules up to, is why we needed to do that.
Mhm.
And had a wonderful meal up there and some wine.
Yeah, some box wine.
This is Father Iakovos. This was as the sun was setting. I captured him chanting like this, and I thought it was beautiful.
That's the Zograf bus.
Yes.
You can see David's bedhead. We all kind of got rushed out of there.
Look at, yeah.
And the bus ride was great because we had to walk up. So we were glad to take the bus back down. Those are the Zolgrafu beds, which were quite comfortable compared to some other beds.
That was there, the parish there.
Mm-hmm. The Catholicon.
There's another.
More of the ossuary.
Yeah, such a neat little beautiful spot.
Yeah, there's St. Pantaleimon.
This is some of the classic Athos style chanting that you're going to hear. It's famous. Obviously, most people listening are going to recognize this, but it's so insanely beautiful, and they're so good at it, and it's like professionals, but it's just amazing. So I wanted you guys to hear this.
I can't hear anything, but maybe everyone else can. Yeah, this is at Philothea, wasn't it? Yeah.
There's some more of it. You guys might be able to see Father Peter there. This is towards the end, I think, there. I can't remember. Back at the beginning.
Yeah, that's at Zolgrafu.
Yes. So
one thing
this.
More cats. At Philothea, where you just were showing that video, during Compline afterwards, they bring out the relics, and that was where we were able to venerate the incorrupt hand of St. John Chrysostom, that was amazing. Like, you could physically put your hands like on the flesh, and it was wonderful.
Kiss it.
So there was some other wonderful saints there as well.
Marina was there as well, which I thought was pretty neat.
That's Podromos Skeet. So again, Skeet, go back to that one book. Go back to the Romanian one real quick.
Yep.
This shows you how like Skeet is like, it's almost a political designator, because that's also bigger than one or two of the monasteries that are of the 20 governing monasteries, but it's a Skeet because it's not, that's like the most Romanian place on Mount Athos. So Romanians, second-class citizens, don't have a full monastery to themselves like the Bulgarians and the Russians. Just kidding, of course. But the bread that they brought us there was some of the best bread I've ever eaten.
Yes.
They had cold water, like ice water, which is rare on Mount Athos. So the hospitality there was top-notch.
Yes.
And the iconography was some of the most beautiful I'd ever seen. The icons of the Last Judgment there blew me away.
Yes.
I think that might have been at Podromo.
More cats. This was at the Bulgarian one, of course. I don't remember where this was, other than
I think that's at the Romanian one.
Here we go. We're getting to the good stuff.
Yeah, this is at the very end or the far end of Mount Athos now.
Yeah. And
that was at Philothea for the all-night vigil to St. Joseph the Hesychast.
Yes.
Obviously, we're at all these monasteries that were restored by Elder Ephraim, which pretty much means by extension they were restored by St. Joseph the Hesychast.
Right. Father Peter mentoring some young men. Conrad here,
going ready for mule journey.
Yes. there's our tools to get up the mountain. They love.
You can see how uncomfortable, like the saddles are just boxes. Like they're not really.
Yeah, let me go back to that. And they love doing this, by the way, because there's part of me, I don't know if it's just the American in me, but you kind of feel like, man, these poor mules got to do this all the way up the mountain. And they assured us, the people that run them, no, this is what they live for. They'd hate just sitting there. Mm-hmm. And so, they definitely work hard. I'll give them that. Father Peter
this is right
on
when we convinced Father Peter to get on.
Yes.
That's a great picture. The top of the mountain's covered by the clouds.
Yes. There's Father Iacovos and Father Peter. Here we go. This is one of my favorite videos.
And this is the Fellowship of the Ring.
Yes.
Heading out.
This is one of those, basically all the stuff in front of us, we're walking across. And it looks like, well, how are we going to do that? We're going to slide off. And then, but as you step, it's like, well, there is a bit of a small path. So
mm-hmm. And right to the right of us is the like if you know what Mount Athos looks like,
it's about to show that
peninsula, and then this is like Gregory doesn't pan right in the video, but like it's just the end, like it's just the end of the mountain. We're right on the very edge, and if you look out, it's just the rest of the Mediterranean. You can't even see the other peninsulas or anything.
I believe I got a shot of that coming up here, but there we go.
Yeah, that's end of the world.
Yes. There's back.
And that's Saint Nilus. That's the skeet where the monks that keep his relics stay, and that was his jawbone. If you go back to that picture,
let's do that.
That was the jawbone that was out for us to
right
venerate.
Here.
Yep.
Yeah, this is really a neat experience, and one I didn't know that was even going to happen.
And that's why I ripped my shirt, my favorite shirt I was wearing the whole time. We all were kneeling, doing full prostrations in front of the relics.
That's right.
And I just ripped all right down my back.
And that's his little cave right here.
Yep. This was a great experience for me because it reminded me so much of Ostrog Monastery, which is a monastery in Montenegro, a Serbian monastery that I've been to before. And it was also what you do there. It's like an hour and a half walk up the mountain, and you're supposed to do it barefoot, which is pretty tough. So I did that, and I had a similar vibe to that, the cave and how remote it was and what was going on up there and the art that was on the walls. It was very beautiful. Then Gregory was able to read and live translate the life of St. Nilus in this cave, which that was crazy, sitting there learning about this guy. Because I had heard of him, of course. I had heard the vague story. It's not like it was the first time I'd ever heard his name, but I had never even read like a full hagiography. So it was great to do that and then read some Akathists and Troparia.
Yes, it was, and the steps getting down there and back up were no joke.
Mm-hmm. And they were really the craftsmanship was amazing, and apparently the monks had restored them in 2020. So
yes,
they were still putting in work on there. So tithe is necessary. That's a great picture.
Yes, we can end with that one because it encapsulates a lot.
You Rokor, you love you like the Russian aesthetics, even though we're in Greece.
Yes, yeah, no kidding. And just what a shot that is. Well, thanks for running through this slideshow with me. I guess talk about real quick before we get out of here. People watching, I wish I would have, I asked Father Peter Heers when I had him on prior to us going. He's pretty ascetic. So he's like, oh, bring a prayer rope and your scriptures and a couple shirts. And, of course, I forget my prayer rope, which you pointed out when we get there. But talk about the people listening that want to go on a pilgrimage. What would you bring if you were them? Because you, by far, had the best selection of smart things to wear.
Well, purely practical reasons, I did spend a decent amount of time and money on some clothes. I've always been, as much as I'm red-pilled on polyesters and artificial things, I was very glad that I bought all of these Lululemon, these kind of looser walking pants that they have. They're pretty expensive, but those it's worth it than just bringing jeans or whatever kind of pants you have. You do not want to bring jeans. You don't want to be wearing sweatpants either, frankly. It's just not going to be ideal. You're going to want hiking boots, and you're going to want something akin to a fishing shirt would be the most commonly described thing, I guess. But for me, I went to REI, and they're literally called hike shirts. And they're not cheap, but they're not the most expensive things ever. And they're just a button-down collared shirt that looks nice, but is very breathable and wicking and everything like that. So I definitely recommend bringing that from a practical perspective. if you're a Southerner like me and Buck, I might have been getting judged silently by the monks and Father Peter and everybody, but that fan saved my life. The fan was so nice. And thankfully, everyone else appreciated at least the white noise because we're all sharing in these like communal rooms. But that was very nice. I would recommend bringing a towel, actually, or a small towel. I was told not to, but I feel bad. I stole some Bulgarian's towel to like use it in at Solkerfu, and I gave it back, but we just didn't have any towels at some of these places. And so, yeah, that, I guess on practical stuff, there's that. Definitely a water bottle and some water, and even like, I think a camelback would even be cool to have brought. But I think, yeah, prayer rope. Obviously, if you forget a prayer rope like Buck, there's a lot of places to buy them, so you can buy new ones. But I would say something that I knew would be a problem, but I didn't realize would become a problem so quickly is make sure you have space to like put stuff if you want to buy anything, especially if you're going to be hiking around, because thankfully especially because a lot of people go to Caudius at the very beginning, and that's where like the biggest icon shops are. And if you're going there and you're not going to go back, you might get caught. I didn't, but you might get caught lugging something like this around the entire Holy Mountain, which wouldn't be desirable. You don't want to get something like this damaged. But if you want to get stuff in Caudius and Daphne, they do have big icons like this. I bought this on our last day in Caudius for an amazing price. So bring some money to spend, because like something like this, hand painted, something like this would be like thousands of dollars in America, but I got this for 100 euros. So be sure to look around for things like that. But yeah, me and Buck had to buy those like satchel things just to put basic prayer ropes and like little icon cards that people were giving us. So be sure you have some extra space. But yeah, the hiking shoes, that was what, even though I also was probably the best prepared for pants and shirts, my shoes I was flexing on everybody with the hiking shoes. I don't know what, like everyone else was wearing like tennis shoes. I was like, I don't know. I'm glad I brought the worst part was, that's one thing. Bring 2 pairs of shoes. That's what you won't think. It takes up a lot of space. I didn't, because I didn't think I had enough space. But the problem was my hiking shoes were great during the day. But then at the monasteries that didn't have slippers, some of them did. I didn't have anything to wear, like walking around. I didn't want to put on my super sweaty hiking boots from the day, but I just had to because I didn't have any other shoes. So bring hiking boots and then like something comfortable to slip on, like some Sperry's or something like that. I don't know if you're going to have those, because I wish I could have even worn different shoes like in church. So I would have had them.
Me too.
So I think that's something I would recommend. But again, those are all very practical. You should bring a positive disposition, a prayerful disposition, of course. And I actually recommend, I don't know what happened to it. I think I loaned it out. But I recommend everybody read, and I read this a long time ago, so I internalized it a lot. I recommend everyone, before they go, they should read Father Spiridon Bailey's Journey to Mount Athos.
Yeah, I need to get that.
He went right after he became an Orthodox priest from Anglicanism. He visited Mount Athos, and I think it'll give you the right mindset to go into it with. So those are my recommendations.
Yeah, I need to get that book. I'm writing that down so I remember. Let's see. I concur on everything. I would say for myself, I get like a cool hiking, not cool, but for lack of a better term, a nice hiking backpack, because
Nicholas was flexing on all of us. He had don't get like one of the big tall ones. You still want it to be compact, but get one that can wrap around your abdomen. Me and Buck were struggling with my lower back, my shoulders were killing me. Whereas Nicholas, he had the thing to strap around his abdomen, and he was in a lot better shape.
And it's got various compartments to do all these things. I took a very generic Adidas backpack like a kid would take to school, and well, it took me to school. So
my backpack, it just wasn't the right. I didn't realize I was so focused on the fact that it had a lot of space for how small it was that I didn't realize that it's just actually not that comfortable of a backpack. So that was my big mistake.
All right. Final takeaways from this trip.
Well, I would say that, without trying to be too controversial here, I would say that there's definitely, a lot of people rail against quote unquote internet orthodoxy because of certain opinions. I get it. If you want to attack anything on the internet, that's your prerogative. But a lot of these monks on Mount Athos would have opinions that a lot of people would describe as, ortho bro online internet orthodoxy. So I think the American Orthodox perspective would be, I think everybody can get a broader perspective by going to Mount Athos as men, and then I think if everyone went, it would give people a better perspective on perhaps how we could handle some of the disputes within American Orthodoxy. But besides that, I think the biggest takeaway was how long it took me to get readjusted to normal world stuff. Like, We were only gone for 7 nights, 8 days. I did have the whole thing in Cyprus, which were pretty much all spent in monasteries. So on my end, it was like 14 days of like pure monastic living almost. And combine that with jet lag and combine that with the fact that you're waking up on monastery time. So like 1, 2 a.m., you're going to bed at 9 a.m. sometimes. You're waking back up at noon for lunch, going to service at 4, going back to bed at like 6 p.m. This is the kind of stuff that's very interesting schedule. So it took me long to adjust from the jet lag. It took me long enough to adjust to like waking up just at, 7:30, 8 a.m. And then it took me a long time to just like get back to like, oh, I have to like work. I have to like go get gas in my car. I have to go to the store to buy food to eat. I have to cook, like, because that's the food at the monasteries is a big part of the rhythm. You sit down, you eat, you're not supposed to talk, you get up, you pray, you leave. You get like, it's very like food is for, so you can stand during the service and pray. Like that's why it's there. It's not for you to sit and enjoy and wine and have a good time with your friends. And getting back to like, I didn't realize quite how detached from the world I had gotten, I guess, until I came back. And it was taking me like 2.5, 3 weeks to like, I'm like, get out of like a fugue state, it felt like. And that's, you really do feel like you're leaving the world. And I posted that picture. You have me and David, then you have Nicholas and Buck in the background. And it's like, that was like right when we walk in. And I was kind of making a face, but everyone else, like, it was jarring, like getting back to the shore and you're seeing women in bikinis on the beach and you're seeing cars honking and driving around and you're seeing like people at restaurants sitting down and drinking. And you're seeing like, even just mixed gender company, you're like, whoa, like what's going on? And you can see on our faces, we're all like, we're not exactly happy about it. So it was quite the interesting experience. And I think the amount that I was surprised at how much I felt like I got taken out of everything.
Yeah, same here. We've talked about my jet lag. I've never had it in my life before, and I've been to Europe several times, but whew, it was, I think, like you said, it's the schedule we were on, the time, and it took a long time. Every day at like 5, I'm asleep, and I could not wake up. And
Father Peter doesn't sleep either. That's the other thing.
That's like, the other thing, yeah. People say
he's
like
on like 2 hours of sleep every day. So
I've heard people say Trump doesn't sleep much. He's always up doing something. He's not reading, but doing something. But Father Peter definitely has a similar vibe, and he's just full of, I want to say passion. I mean it in the good way, not like passions of sin, but he's full of love for Mount Athos and the monks and Christ, and he was in his realm there. He was loving everything. Very helpful guide for us, not only translating, but just the one-on-one talks here and there, and just kind of to pick his brain about certain things. I learned a lot from him. I thought it was wonderful. Plug away, sir.
worldwarnow.co, worldwarnow.substack.com. Both links work, obviously. I'm sure Buck will have it all linked below. We have a YouTube channel as well, so head on over there. It's easy to subscribe here if you're listening on YouTube already. So we're trying to get up to 5,000 subscribers on there. It really helps us out. World War Now _ is the World War Now Twitter. My Twitter is at GnomeRad, so like a garden gnome, RAD. That's the username. We're on Telegram as well, World War Now Telly, and that pretty much covers all of our bases. Again, if you want to hear more about this trip, be sure to check out the recent live stream I did with Father Peter, David, and my co-host Dimitri. Gregory here stops by for about 25, 30 minutes in that stream as well. So you don't want to miss that. We go through a lot of pictures. I feel like Buck took slightly better pictures than me, so I'm a little jealous there. But, we go through some good stuff all the same. And, I think we'll be looking for things to have Buck maybe come on our show to discuss some things. I'm sure me and Dimitri will in the future be back here. Yeah. So it's always good to be here with you, Buck. It's an honor. Thank you for having me on to talk about the wonderful trip. I feel like like I said, we have a bond now that will never be broken.
Yes, indeed. Conrad Franz, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
I hope you guys got something out of that, just to go over it and see the pictures again and everything. I don't know if I mentioned this in the show, but just about, it's been 3 weeks now, at least, since we returned. Almost every night I've had a dream that I was still in a monastery, which is interesting to me. I'm not one to interpret dreams. I don't know what that means. Maybe it just means that just living that moment was drilled down deep into my heart and soul or something like that. But almost every night I have these dreams. Let's see. As for this show, counterflowpodcast.com. Follow me on Twitter at BuckRebel, BuckRebel. And until next week, you guys have a good one.
You get split in half, 'cause I call on the hologram graph, but I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus, but I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Like the sound of the Counterflow Podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.